everyone was way more easier to connect with 25 years ago. And, I'm blaming technology, and yes, that's part of it, but also, I have to overcome that, and we all have to overcome that. But also, I do remember when I traveled 25 years ago, I'd gone for 25 months, but I remember there were like days and weeks where I felt very disconnected, and I wasn't like meeting people or having the good conversations or whatever. And that's why partly I decided to do 10 weeks this time, is that I know that it takes me a long time to warm up into things. And so like, I think when I was traveling 25 years ago, I only really felt in the flow after maybe 5 months. And that's when it all started to flow and I started to do different things. But then I was thinking that if I'd given up the travels within that first 5 months, I would have come away with a very different experience than 25 months traveling.
Harry, how are you doing? I'm not quite sure where you are at the moment. You're in Thailand, is that right? Or have you moved on since then?
No, I'm in Thailand, and I've been basically stuck in this room all day. I don't know if you've seen my pictures or my posts from about an hour or two ago, but the rain has been non-stop, and literally the roads were so flooded that the water was going up to beyond the wing mirrors of cars, and there were like cars stuck. And so I've been basically trapped here all day. But there are worse places to be trapped, because I've got a nice hookup with where I am. I'm staying, actually, bizarrely enough, at a rehab center, like a drug rehab center, because Thailand has got so expensive. And granted, the last time I was properly in Koh Phangan was 17, 18 years ago, and probably about 25 years ago when I was budget traveling. But to stay anywhere close to the beach, you're looking at the price was like 100, 200 pounds a night. And I was staying here 25 years ago, spending about £2 a night. So we're talking about 100 times more expensive.
Wow.
And the food has got way more expensive. And so anyway, it turns out an old colleague of mine from the S group, this personal development group I used to run, he, I think, owns this rehab center. He's an ex-addict himself, and he's got a few rehab centers around the world, like a couple in Europe and Israel and here. So he's letting me have this beachfront accommodation, which I think is about £120 a night. I'm getting it for like a lot less than that. I'm still obviously having to pay for it. So it's not all bad. I get to see the beach and the sea, or I haven't been in today, just from my room. And so I've been, just holed up in the room, not doing much, but still being very grateful for being here instead of where I was a few nights ago, which was a little dingy space, with no view. So
last time we spoke, you're in Bali. You were doing deep diving and food diving and things like that. Your ankle was bad. Yeah. Next time we speak, you're now in Thailand. So how did that come about?
So my visa was going to run out probably in about 2 days for Bali. And I thought, I've got 2 weeks left. So just over a week and a half left now. And I thought I would go somewhere with better weather, but actually the weather's terrible here. I thought it was going to be a bit sunnier. So that's what, and I've been to Thailand before, and I decided that I wanted to, so I reworked my flight. So it's flying back from Phuket, which is a place in Thailand. And that's going to go via Doha home rather than change it from Bali and go back to Bali or anything like that. So, so I'm here, but I don't know if I'm going to stay. I mean, I'm going to stay 5 nights in this place, and then I might go over towards Phuket, which is where I'm going to fly back from, and go to some places around there, or stay here. At the moment, I haven't really met enough people. There's a few people I know from, actually, bizarrely enough, I bumped into someone I met 6 years ago in Goa. Like, you would like her, actually. She's like, you're the fittest person I know, but she's like the fittest old lady. She's 70 years old.
Fitter than Helen, who we know. Ed and Helen. She's pretty fit.
Yeah, I think fitter. I mean, she's older than Helen, I guess, but she's 70 years old. Her mum only just passed. Her mum's birthday would have been yesterday. She would have turned 100 yesterday, but she passed away earlier in the year. So her mum went to 99 in 24 days. But this woman, right, when I met up with her, she'd already done an hour of yoga and a 90-minute swim in the sea. She's always on the go, and she just has been traveling full time. But I bumped into her. I hung out with her in Goa in 2019. And then she saw my stories on Instagram. So, the technology there. And she was like, where are you? Are you in Thailand? And I was like, yeah. And it turns out we're on the same island, and we're on the same part of the island as well. Although we haven't really met up much. She's trapped at the moment in her in her bungalow with like a foot of muddy water outside her bungalow. So I bumped into her, and then there was a couple of people from Mind Valley that I had dinner with the other day, but I don't feel super connected to the space at the moment, so we'll see. I haven't met enough people. I feel I haven't really found my
So
vibe.
For our listeners, for those that are tuning into today's episode, it's going to be a little bit shorter today due to other commitments. I know you've got to be away, we both do. But, there's a saying that the present moment is all you have. So, where are you in the world of your journey here, Harry, in terms of your mindfulness journey over to Bali or Thailand? A bit of an escape, bit of a refresh. What have you been discovering?
You know what? I've been thinking a lot about your, not quote, but your saying to Leo many months ago. When you were talking about him saying he was bored, and then you were saying only boring people get bored and all that. I'm thinking a lot about that because honestly, I've been feeling quite bored the last couple of weeks, and I'm like, actually, was I wrong in extending my ticket, and should I have just gone home? And I don't know. I'm really, honestly, I'm kind of struggling. I'm like, I haven't got the motivation at the moment to do much, and I don't know whether that's just too much. I've holidayed myself out, or I just feel like I haven't connected with the right vibe of people recently. And that kind of saying that you said really is playing on me. I'm like, is that like? I mean, even like, and put it this way, I was bored at this this thing last weekend, which we'll get into because I'm sure you'll be excited to hear about it. But I was at this training last weekend, my last weekend in Bali. I went back to Ubud, which is like the spiritual center. A friend of mine from Ubud had done this weekend workshop, and he really liked it. He felt like he connected with people and everything else. And it was a tantric workshop. So most people are familiar with Tantra in terms of tantric sex and the Kama Sutra and things like that. And so I signed up, but it wasn't the basic one that he went on because there wasn't available. So it was more of an advanced one. So it was a weekend, but it wasn't really a weekend. It started Saturday evening, 6 till 9, and then all day Sunday, then Monday, and then Monday evening there was like a tantric temple that was open to people who'd done the course, but also other people in the tantric community. And honestly, that first day, I was 3 hours. I was just like, I don't know. I just found like I couldn't wait for the 3 hours to finish. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to survive the weekend. I was finding it quite. I wasn't really connecting with the facilitator, I don't think, and I found it a bit boring. But then it was a bit. I mean, I won't lie. We're not really supposed to say what goes on in there, so I don't think I should say too much. Or I guess I can talk about my experiences there, but I won't talk about specifics with people, obviously, and won't give names. But it was, let's say, it was interesting. I felt like the first day, I think I definitely got lost at the end. They were doing like a ritual, so like to open up the space and open up the event. But they were talking about towards the end of it. What I did like, she was talking about it in terms of 5 elements, like air, water, earth, fire, ether, and like the different chakras. And it's all about, it's hard to describe because I didn't really explain the basics of what Tantra is. So for me to explain it, it's kind of a spiritual practice, a breathing practice, an intimacy practice. It's a bunch of different things like that rolled into one. And she was talking about it from like an energy point of view, lining up the chakras and the various elements. But the final element, so there was like what they call a yantra, which is like this flower, this 4-sided shape that is made with flowers on the floor, and each one represented something that like an air, water, earth, fire, and then the last element, ether, was going to be represented in a different way. But she was saying that the ether one was all about, I don't know, shedding your shame and your whatever, because there's a lot of shame around sex and bodies and things like that we're conditioned with. And honestly, once we've done the rituals and you spend a bit of time in each of the corners, and then the men went to one side, the women went to the other side. There was about 40 of us, probably about 20 guys, 20 girls, and then honestly, people just started taking all their clothes off. I'm not even joking. Like stripped around, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. I think I was one of like 2 guys that didn't take all their clothes off, and I think pretty much all the girls took all their clothes off. And then the next day in the share, and they wanted to like hear from a few people, and then I put my hand up and I said, look, honestly, I didn't even think I was going to come back this morning because I wasn't vibing with it. And also when everyone took their clothes off, because it feels like a cult, right? Like very cultish.
It's sounding quite cultish, to be honest.
Yeah, and it is in a way. It's very strange if you're looking from the outside, and even from the inside, it was very strange.
So you spoke up. So what did they say?
I just said, look, I felt like people were a lot of people were just taking their clothes off because they were getting part and parcel of the run of things, and they weren't really like doing it from their own volition. And I just thought to myself, I don't need to be taking my clothes off to show that I'm not ashamed of my body. I don't have a problem being naked in front of my partner if I'm with someone or anything like that, or being there with the lights on. And I don't have that. So I know it's like a bit of a metaphor. But then that open up the floodgates. So like when people go in swimming, like people were just naked in the pool, and like you'd go into use my bathroom and there'd be like a naked person on the bed somewhere. So there's a lot of nudity. And then on the main day, the Sunday, we did different exercises, and you partnered up with different people. If you had a partner with you, you could do it with them. You could talk through the exercises if you didn't feel comfortable doing a physical practice, or you could do it what they call energetically. So instead of placing your hand in places, you could like just place your hand over that space. And honestly, I think that the whole day we did like maybe 4 exercises, and I think there was a lot of fluff around there. Some of the exercises were quite good, and some were quite intimate if you wanted to be. And then the temple itself is like basically, I don't want to say it's not a sex party because one of the rules, at least in this temple, was no penetration. So you're not allowed to have penetrative sex.
But anything else goes, right?
I mean, honestly, I didn't see anything more than some kissing and touching and some level of toplessness. I don't know if anyone got naked. I don't think anyone got naked, but there were different sections. So there was like a more dominative side, a more meditative side, a side that you could just sit and watch and observe, a side that you could like dance in. There was like a tea ceremony in one section, a place just for cuddles, and what was quite good with it was all a lot of it's about knowing your boundaries, knowing your desires, knowing when to say what you want and what you don't want, and speaking up. So that was quite interesting.
What ultimately is the point of it? It sounds like a cultish sex party to me. I mean, I know and I'm being deliberately antagonistic by saying things like that because I want to try and get a reaction from you. But I don't understand necessarily what are the point of the 2-day.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of people to get out of their heads, into their bodies, into their sexuality, away from this Western shame way of feeling about your body.
And maybe I'm wrong, but it appears to me that the kind of people that would go to that kind of thing are the kind of people that aren't carrying around that thing. They're happy with their bodies anyway. They're not carrying around a lot of shame. And actually, it sounds to me like it's the kind of place they go, I'm going to go along again. It's kind of this almost hippie type place I can go to, get my clothes off in front of everyone else and just be all,
Well, that only happened the nudity only happened that first night. But I think a lot of those people had done other tantric sessions before.
That's what I mean. I mean, how many I don't know, quote unquote day-to-day people are there kind of doing these things?
No, but they've gone through. I mean, I spoke to a few people, and they've had their progression, right? They've been in that tantric community a year, 4 years, 5 years, and like where they start and where they were there is vastly different. But honestly, I just don't know if I connected with the facilitators, and because I didn't get basics around it. I mean, I've done some basic tantric stuff before. I think I explained one that we did in the summer last year, which was like an intimate touch thing that we did.
Yeah, you did. You talked on the show, I think.
And that was a tantric exercise. So I've done very, very limited tantric stuff. I had a friend that wanted me to help facilitate her tantric stuff a while back, which again, like some of the tantric stuff is all about breath work. It's about spirituality, but sex is a part of it. It's like saying like yoga is just a physical practice, whereas that's like one of the 8 limbs of yoga, and that yoga is a whole philosophy. But in the West, we see it as a physical practice. Same with tantric, people will see it as a sex Kama Sutra type thing, which is like a small part of tantric, but ultimately it's about getting a spiritual connection and marrying up the physical and the spiritual connection with each other.
Go back to your situation where you said you're feeling a bit bored, and only bored people get bored, and thinking about that a lot. It sounds to me as an observer, a neutral observer, or a friendly observer, that maybe you're bored because you're lacking a little bit of purpose at the moment. And I wonder, it sounds to me like you've almost gone to this tantric event through because you're inquisitive, you're interested, there's something to do. It's kind of in that sphere of things you're into, which is mind and body and spirit. But actually, when you're there, you're kind of realizing, well, I don't have any shame necessarily I'm looking to lose. I don't need that element of it. I'm not necessarily feeling it with the facilitator, but you're probably not feeling it because you're not 100% sure why you're even there. You're there because it's a point of interest, but there's no real need for you to be there because you're comfortable in the areas that they're potentially tackling. Maybe.
No, the reason I think I was there was because I did want to, meet people. I wanted to maybe have a connection. I don't think it was the right space, or it didn't happen for me, like in terms of who I met and any connections I had. But I think what you talk about with purpose has also played on me a little bit, because I've been thinking a little bit, one of our first podcasts, 3 years ago, whenever it was talking about generative AI and how that's going to change the world, and what happens when people have all their jobs replaced, and let's say there is some sort of universal basic income, and do we lose purpose? Because I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, how did I do 2 years of traveling? I guess I did 2 years of traveling before because I was just out of uni, but I was thinking, what was I doing all day? And I remember I was chatting to people, I was reading. I find that here it's a lot different because of the mobile phones and people. We go out for dinner. If you're by yourself, you tend to be sucked into a screen, and so I feel like, yes, I haven't got a purpose here, and that has been playing on my mind as well. I was like, what happens if things do develop society wise? We still need to find a reason to get up in the morning and to do something. Sure. And that's really tricky if you don't have the struggle. I mean, this is what I think it is that, like, I'm not sure I've earned this holiday. Like that was also something I was like, yeah, maybe I'd earn the first 3 weeks of it or something, 4 weeks of it, but then I don't know if I've earned 10 weeks of it. Like, and I feel like, I feel like, when you get, I think you've talked about it before, right? Where the analogy of the Everest, right? If you get plonked on the man on Everest, that view is going to be different from if you climbed up. And it's kind of like that. I feel like maybe I'm at the viewpoint without having done the journey enough. And so, I've got lots of weird conflicting thoughts.
We need to struggle to get the high, right? That's the yin and the yang, maybe... I think you can give yourself permission to let some of that, what ultimately is, it sounds almost like guilt of being out there for so long when you don't feel like you've earned it, or your body's probably recovered and there's other things. You can go right back to your beat model. There'll be something in your beat model that isn't quite full at the moment. Maybe it's that community piece. You haven't found your tribe there, so you're lacking, and maybe you're trying to force it a little bit by going to some of these events that don't quite meet what it is you're looking for. It's interesting though, because for people listening to this will listen, maybe if they listen to you for a long time, they'll think, how he optimizes so many parts of his life. And therefore we have this assumption that, because you and I have this show, that you and I are always top of the world. That's not the situation at all, right? We're constantly got to work at it. And we've got to reinvent ourselves. I think it was interesting when you said that, what were you doing when you first went traveling? I think when you're younger, you think you know all the answers, and you think you know who you are, and you think you understand how the world works. But in reality, you're very much still in discovery phase. I think for the whole of my 20s, you think you've got the answers, but you're still discovering, you're still learning. Everything is still in that, you're still in that state of wonderment. It's probably the first time you've visited those countries. Now it's maybe the 5th, 6th, 7th time you've been to these places. You're doing, it's the first one you've done this sort of level of tantric. You've been to these kind of, meetings and meetups and things for Mind Valley and other things for many years now. So that I guess that level of wonderment, that first time experience for you probably isn't quite the same as it was. So a level of excitement just dims a little bit.
I mean, it's interesting, because I actually stayed in hostels as well, since being here. As you know, some of the recordings were in hostels, and I was in a hostel in a place called Uluwatu, and I was hanging out with most people were like 22, 23. and I'm thinking, I'm not in that same conversation or space. I have actually, honestly, I haven't actually gone out since I've been away, really. And when I say gone out, I mean, like, I haven't actually even had a drink. I think the last time I had a drink was Christmas Day. Not that having a drink constitutes going out, but just to say, I'm not really, I don't know, I'm not in that space of even like wanting to socialize too much. Even like the other day, I was having dinner with some of these Mind Valley people, and then it was about sort of 7 or 8 o'clock, and they said, "Oh, there's and there was some event somewhere. I think it was like maybe like an ecstatic dance type thing and sauna and stuff." But I was like, you know what? Actually, I don't really want to socialize right now. I just want to go back and watch a movie, and then I'm thinking, and I'm second guessing that in myself, because I'm like, I need to be going out and seeing people and meeting people, because otherwise nothing changes, right? You always do what you've always done.
For
you always
sure.
get what you've want. But I don't know, and I don't know. Maybe
you can watch a movie at home back in London, right, or wherever you are in Brighton.
Where? So actually, yesterday, then I went to there was an ecstatic dance from like 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. I actually went about 12:30, but honestly, I just wasn't feeling it. I was there, so ecstatic dancing is, basically, sober dancing. So everyone's kind of sober, but I don't know. I wasn't really feeling the music massively, even though it's a kind of a friend of a friend who's DJing. But I don't know. I just wasn't feeling it. And then I'm thinking to myself, I'm second guessing myself, and I'm like going, what's going on with me at the moment? Because I'm like,
what I would do if I was you right now from listening to it. You probably won't do this, by the way, but this is what I would suggest. This would be my tonic, and I'd be interested to know if the listeners are thinking along the same lines. So, we've talked about fear in the past, and in my theory for fear is it's anxiety plus uncertainty equals fear, right? And I think at the moment you're finding or trying to find solace in doing the things you've always done, as you said, and getting the same reaction. So the ecstatic dance, you've done that before, kind of know the kind of people that are going to be there for whatever reason. At this moment in time in your life, it's not flowing about like it was. So you'd rather kind of stay in and watch a movie, which you could do back in Brighton. What I would say is you're in Thailand now. I don't know where. I've never been to Thailand, but if it was me, and it doesn't have to involve a drink, although it could, I would lean into the thing you don't want to do, or you're not pressed to do, and which you can't do in Brighton, and that is go out tonight or wherever it is, go into a bar or wherever people are frequenting, not your usual tribe, strike up a conversation with the bartender or with someone in the place. Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to drink alcohol, and if you don't want to do that bit, but I do think you can put yourself in a place of relative uncomfortableness where you've got to force yourself to be sociable with people you've never met. And actually, they're probably the local Thailand people that are going to be there, and maybe other holiday makers that aren't from your usual tribes, where you can actually strike up a conversation. Because I know that if you look at you and I, right, we came from pretty different places when we first met. We had, we didn't know what we had in common, but where we struck our friendship up was the fact we were coming from two very different places. We were thrown together on a cycle ship, and we were kind of forced to chat. I think, you'd have had a very different experience if everyone on that cycle trip had come from a Mind Valley event. It just would have been a different type of cycle trip. What made that cycle trip work was that everyone came from completely different backgrounds or completely different places. It's almost like Fraggle Rock coming together, or the Star Wars bar. Everyone, different aliens, all coming from different places. But we all got on, and we all sort of found everyone else's story interesting. I just wonder if there's a homogeneity isn't the word. What's the word I'm looking for? Homogenous kind of response you're getting by going to the same places, which means the conversation's relatively similar. Kind of know what you're going to get. I'd break the mold. Go and put yourself out of your comfort zone. Go out tonight. Go to a bar. Go and get dinner. Go and strike up conversations with people that you don't know. You have no idea what their interests are. I guarantee you'd come back revived, buzzed up by the conversations, the learnings, the chance to share your story as much as it is to hear theirs. And it'd be way better than a movie indoors in your
yeah, you're right.
It's the harder route. It's the uncomfortable route.
It's the uncomfortable route, especially uncomfortable today because it's still pissing it down with rain and the roads are flooded. But
an easy story, easy conversation starter, right? It's always like this, that's a great way to just go into a bar and go, hey, God, trade must be slow with this weather. Whatever it is, just you can force that bit out.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I'm not going to make any promises for tonight, but you are right. And
you should. I mean, potentially on the other side of your fear. Lean in. That's what I would do.
I feel like you're probably not correct in thinking that I'm always hanging out with the same kind of people. I am doing different different interactions. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I guess maybe part of it is also comparative nature. Like I'm comparing this experience to 25 years ago. And actually, when I compare it to 25 years ago, it has similarities and it has differences, right? The biggest difference is I felt like everyone was way more easier to connect with 25 years ago. And, I'm blaming technology, and yes, that's part of it, but also, I have to overcome that, and we all have to overcome that. But also, I do remember when I traveled 25 years ago, I'd gone for 25 months, but I remember there were like days and weeks where I felt very disconnected and I wasn't like meeting people or having the good conversations or whatever. And that's why partly I decided to do 10 weeks this time, is that I know that it takes me a long time to warm up into things. And so like, I think when I was traveling 25 years ago, I only really felt in the flow after maybe 5 months. I remember it was after 5 months because my sisters came out, and after they went back, they came out for like just a couple of weeks, and then I met up with a cool group of people and we traveled a bit together. Then I ended up meeting up with those same guys in Australia 2 or 3 times, and that's when it all started to flow and I started to do different things. But then I was thinking that if I'd given up the travels within that first 5 months, I would have come away with a very different experience than 25 months traveling. So I think part of it's that, and not to kind of beat myself up that every day and every week has to be like this amazing adventure.
For sure. I'll give a story for you. You might like this. I'm not sure my wife will thank me for sharing it, but I'll share it anyway. We thought we'd go old school. This was a couple of years ago now. And Lucy said, you know what? She used to work for Canvas Holiday. So she spent summers abroad living in tents, setting up tents for the holiday makers. She grew up camping. She's lived in France. She's lived in Mexico camping. She's traveled across the States, well traveled, always like tents involved. Because when we all grew up, the foreign travel back in the day when we all got up until I was a kid in the late 80s, early 90s, going on a plane abroad wasn't the done thing. Everyone kind of jumped on a ferry and got a tent in France or in Cornwall or whatever, and that was the kind of typical family holiday, or certainly in the groups of people that my family were friends with and whatever. So Aretha would go old school. We thought we'd book a holiday at a country park in Devon, had all the activities you like for the kids, would book a tent, that's fine, rather than a hotel and what we'd usually do, and we'd go back to basics. So we booked this thing. Now, admittedly, it absolutely pissed it down the entire time. The weather was awful. And when you've got an activity thing to do and mud is everywhere and on a campsite, and you then suddenly realize that you're pitched up, things you never really realized when you were a kid or would appreciate as much. Maybe our parents did, but that's all they could afford and it was the norm. But for us, you're pitched up 2 meters away from 6 other tents. You can kind of hear everything that's going on. You've got that lack of privacy. You've got to walk to the loos, which are all a bit crappy and wet, shitty showers. I'm really sad. I think round 2, and my wife, honestly, we're on holiday and I've never seen her so depressed and upset. And I was like, what is wrong with you? She couldn't put her finger on it, but at the time. But ultimately, it was down to the fact that her memory of these holidays was amazing. It was really good and fun, and making friends at the park and going out and bivable. Going back to it when you have the resources that you don't need to be in this tent. We could have gone to a hotel, we could have gone abroad, we could have done all these things. We decided not to. And then the weather and the cold, nobody else walked in. She was miserable. Like, it was a really, really shit holiday. We actually left early. I was like, look, we've got 2 options here. I actually said to her, either you go home and I will stay here with the kids on my own and we're going to have fun in the mud and make the most of it. Or we all go back, or we just pack this tent up and go and get a hotel and do something else, because it's not working. And there's no point kind of trying to force something that just isn't there. But it was that, going back where both our memories of these holidays and tents were amazing growing up. Like, it hasn't changed those memories for me, but trying to do it now when A, I didn't need to, B, the weather was crap, and C, trying to make a good time of something just wasn't working. We just had to change it up. So I do have an understanding of what it is, because you're still living in that comparative memory of what it was like when you're in your... And of course, don't forget, our memory plays tricks with us. It tends to remember all the good stuff and it omits all the bad stuff. So that's why we often think we were different when we were younger. I used to be more fun. People say I used to be much more fun than I am now. I used to laugh more than I do now. All these different things that we tell ourselves. Often it's bullshit. It's just the way our brain wants us to recall the good times, and quite deliberately for our own survival, it omits the negative shit.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I often think to that other phrase that you say a lot, like comparison is the thief of joy or something like that. You say all the time.
That's the thief of joy.
And we and we kind of, I do that all the time, whether it's like with a partner, right? You find a new partner and then you're comparing them to a previous partner you had, or the experience that we've had, like in holidays. And I've got a friend who loves like school, right? As in, he's always keen to do any of the reunions that crop up in the emails, and, talks about it through rose tinted glasses. And sometimes I think, and a lot of people I haven't seen from school, and I just think sometimes it's best to leave that there, leave the memory as it is rather than revisit. And because it's kind of like when they do not always, but like a remake, or they do a sequel to a movie like many years later. Some of them work out great, and they might be like a Top Gun Maverick or a Cobra Kai series, but a lot of the time they work out not so great. And you think, you romanticize the past, and then you want to relive it, maybe to capture some of our own youth. And it's often doesn't work out, and it's really hard to like go into things with fresh eyes, especially
it is.
before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm struggling with that, and I am mindful of that. Right, we talk about mindful paths, right? So a lot of what I'm going through, I'm mindful of, and when it comes to that beat model that I'm talking about, I am thinking through that, and I'm going, what is it that I'm not, and there's a few things that I need to tweak to bring my energy back up, like. I need to get into a regular exercise pattern, and even though they've got daily yoga here, it's not really floating my boat so much. It's very, very basic, and I've got a gym, which I did a bit of workout yesterday, but nothing. I haven't got a consistency with my workout at the moment. I think that's partly to do with always moving around, and I feel like I'm craving a little bit of routine. Like there's a lot to be said, like people who have got just a 9-to-5 job, they work in the same building all the time. And I remember I kind of liked that when I had it, because you got to do, you knew that, 6:00 on the Tuesday and Thursday, I was going to yoga, and 7:30 in the morning, I was doing the gym or whatever. I had a routine. And here, well, my life hasn't been routine for so long, and I think I'm struggling with that a little bit. So I need to.
Humans love routine as well. We think we don't, and we like people to be spontaneous for sure, but ultimately we love routine. I mean, the pandemic showed that in brilliantly when we suddenly went where people could work from home whenever they wanted, and then people realized you could come. If you're working hybrid. People wanted the structure. They wanted to know when they needed. They wanted specific days to be in the office rather than just being one day a week. They want to know what day is that, because I need to know when I'm in so I can work it around. We like routine. It's what we fall into. It's something that's what makes spontaneity exciting. If it was always spontaneous, it would just be pandemonium. Right? We like them ever so often to break that routine. It brings us out of it. But I would say though, for where you are, there's a great saying, and I think sometimes, just to preface it, we feel guilty when we've got our health. We're in somewhere like Thailand. Like there's a level of guilt that's probably coming in to go, there's no reason I should be feeling like this, when a lot of other people would be going, I'm in Thailand. I'm so lucky. I'm so fortunate. We're in that position where we feel like we are the fortunate ones, or certainly that others would perceive us to be the fortunate ones. That level of almost brings a level of guilt that then makes, compounds how we're feeling. You might be feeling, I've got no right to be feeling like this because I'm in Thailand when everyone else is in the UK working 9 to 5 or whatever. I'm at this temple in my spare time. I'm getting saunas and massages, and what right do I have to feel like this? And that level of guilt was probably putting you down a little bit because of where you are in the world. But there's a great saying, I think it was Aristotle, it may not be, but it's something that I read it in that Cured book, which I know I've quoted a few times, which I think is a brilliant book. It says you don't have to be ill to get better. You don't have to be able to get better. I think sometimes we'll wait and we don't do anything for feeling okay. We'll have the guilt or whatever. We don't actually take the proactive steps to make ourselves feel better if we've got our health or in a beautiful place in the world. And I'd go back to what I would challenge you to do, which is get out and go and make conversation with people that are completely different in a totally different environment. And that, I think that will help you personally. And I know how uncomfortable that can be, but sort of getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. But you don't need to be able to get better. And I think if there are things that you can do, Hari, where you are in Thailand, and you can take out that comparative piece, and I think there's a little, that level of guilt that may or may not be in there, whether that's the right word or not, I don't know. But I think what can you do to optimize yourself to feel better even though you're not necessarily ill. You say you don't need to be able to get better. What are those things that you can do? And I think that's the same for anyone that's listening. That's why coaching's so powerful. People say, I don't need coaching because I feel fine. That's the point. It's like you don't want to go and get coaching when you feel bad. If you get coaching early enough, you don't need, it's preventative. It's like, don't wait to get injured to put a plaster on, to take the actions before you need, to prevent it in the first place.
JFK, which I always like, I think it's JFK, former president, says the time to fix the roof is when the sun is shining.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah.
And I think that's right, is that you do, you gotta, it's a bit like when I said to you before many times, where we're talking about our training routines, and you train for performance and you train for events, and I train for life, and just being able to cope with life. And I think, that's applicable here, where, you don't need to wait till things get bad before you kind of make them better. So I think that's a good point.
I think also for you, Harry, like, don't lose sight. And we've brought this up a lot on the show, but I'm still in the same boat as you, right? There's a level of, you're still in that process of losing your dad, and with you losing your dad, there's a level of purpose there that would have, someone you would have shared some of these stories with, because you did, where you're out there, you'd have stayed in contact, and you haven't got that one of your close friends and family members that you would have shared some of these stories with. So when that happens, I know, because I've been feeling something very similar on my end, having lost my dad just after yours, and you think, let's come up to the anniversary now, which is on the 18th of March. You think, you know what, that still hits. Sometimes things don't seem quite as fun anymore, or for me, they lack a little bit of value or purpose because I can't share them with one of the most important people in my life. And I think, we've probably both, within that year period, just over a year for you, in that period of still getting through that bit, right? It's a massive loss for both of us. And I think, don't beat yourself up too hard. Equally, on the flip side, you mentioned earlier, well, the weather's a bit crap, and I probably won't go and do that thing today by going out, but go back to a saying I used to talk about a lot on this show, which is, your day does not dictate your mood dictates your day. And whatever the weather, we can find happiness. We just got to be willing to embrace it. But I do think maybe you're being a little bit hard on yourself with this lack of purpose piece, and I wouldn't underestimate the subconscious impact maybe that you're losing your dad over a year ago is probably having, because last time you went traveling, he'd have been there, and you'd have been sharing these stories and sharing these experiences and thriving in them and sending postcards and pictures or whatever. You can't do that now in the same way. And I know that's a challenge. That's difficult. So I think be kind to yourself as well.
And I think there's definitely a hole there. And I think but I don't know that's affecting it massively, but I feel like I'm aware of it. I'm aware of that gap in the family life while I'm here. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just in a bit of a funk, which is, I guess, derived from, I think it's the purpose piece. I think it's like, because that's part of the beat model under that activity bit. Like the purpose and connection pieces are two undervalued places in society when we think about energy and vitality and health and well-being, but they're so important, right? And also the service piece. I'm going to actually go back into doing some volunteering, some mentoring, which I haven't done for the last few months, but I'm signing up to do mentoring for young kids again. So that piece is often missed, right? The service, the passion, the purpose, connection piece, and it's like we've talked about many times on this podcast. It's an area, especially the connection piece, that I need to address in order to really optimize myself, but also purpose, right? And I think it's just led me to think about purpose a lot, being here.
I mean, that was the first that came to mind when I heard you. I wasn't expecting this conversation necessarily. We haven't spoken to you for a while, but that's the first thing that came to mind when you were talking about how you were feeling, for sure. I think also, you never know, and this isn't to dismiss anything, but it's the 24th today. I've realised that on the 6th of every month, it's almost like my male cycle. I know obviously women have the menstrual cycle, and the mood can be impacted as a result of hormone changes. And there's a lot of studies that say men go through something not as severe, but there are times in the month where we feel more upbeat and more low key. And I know that, and my wife's just good with it as well, that only around the 6th of the month, I'm just generally a bit more aggy. a bit more miserable. I'm not as high as I often am. You know, my energy levels are usually pretty high. I'd like to think I'm quite a positive, energetic person. But like anybody, to maintain those levels all the time is unrealistic, and we have to have our down moments. But usually for me, it's the first, that sort of first week of the month. I just don't tend to be as upbeat as I don't want this to be a self-fulfilling, conversation I have with myself either. Now it's still I've got to be miserable, but certainly we've been recording it for the last 3 months, and there's definitely a mood shift for me. Like I just feel like my hormones or my levels are just a little bit out. I'll take a few more supplements now, more vitamin D, whatever it is, just try and pick myself. I feel like I need more of a pick-me-up in the first kind of week of those months. Now, I don't know where it is for you, but if it is true and all men go through this kind of cyclical feeling of just slight lowness, maybe for you it's around the third week in the month. I don't know. Let's see where we are in a month's time. But there may be a few things coming together at the same time that just compounding and making the effects maybe a little bit worse for you. But
yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I've got to might have to wrap it up here, buddy, because I've got a call in a couple of minutes. But yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, one thing I live by is this too shall pass, and I know that things come in cycles. And one of the things that I've stopped doing for probably the last 7 years, 8 years, is wallowing too much in that feeling that I have, whether it's a high feeling or a low feeling, because I know that doesn't last either which way. And so, and you know, that's kind of what got me through the tantric weekend. I was thinking, oh, all right, 2 days and it'll be over and I'll be on something else. And so I know that the way I feel now is not the way I'm going to feel tomorrow or next week or next. So that definitely helps. I mean, that's my main stress management tactic, is this too shall pass. And so I don't know if it's cyclical or whether it's anything else, but there goes my alarm saying that I need to jump on the call. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, I guess that's where I'm going to leave it.
If the sun was shining outside, maybe you'd be feeling slightly. There was a bit of an SAD in there. Maybe there were loads of things going on, right? There's no point trying to define any one thing.
Exactly. When you're a little bit trapped, it's even though I've got a wonderful view, the weather does make a difference. It does.
It definitely makes a difference. 100%.
All right, buddy.
This too shall pass, bud. Good to see you. Go enjoy your meeting. I'm sorry to hear you feeling a little bit low, but hopefully next time you'll have come through it. And go and my recommendation would be to lean into. It's what I mentioned earlier. Get yourself out there. Go and meet some people that are completely outside of usual view. Feel a bit uncomfortable. And the next time we meet up, you can tell me the stories of the conversations you had with the people you met. That'd be exciting.